Washington and the Senate voted narrowly on Tuesday to begin debate on a bill to repeal major provisions of the Affordable Care Act, but hours later, Republican leaders suffered a setback when their most comprehensive plan to replace President Barack Obama's health law fell far short of the votes it needed. The Tuesday night tally needed to reach 60 votes to overcome a parliamentary objection. Instead, it fell 43-57. The fact that the comprehensive replacement plan came up well short of even 50 votes was an ominous sign for Republican leaders still seeking a formula to pass final health care legislation this week. For Republicans, the failure ended the day on a sour note, hours after a more triumphant scene on the Senate floor. Lawmakers from both parties had risen to their feet in the afternoon and applauded when Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona, showed up in the chamber despite his diagnosis of brain cancer. He cast a crucial vote in favor of opening what promises to be a freewheeling, hard-fought debate over the future of the affordable. The 51-50 vote to start debate, with Vice President Mike Pence breaking a tie, came only a week after the Republican effort to dismantle a pillar of Mr. Obama's legacy appeared all but doomed. It provided an initial win for President Trump, who pushed, cajoled and threatened senators in recent days to at least begin debating the repeal of the. But the victory could be fleeting. Senate Republicans still have no agreement on a repeal bill that they can ultimately pass to uproot the law that has provided health insurance to millions of Americans. The Senate is now moving ahead with debate, amendments and ultimately a final vote in the coming days on legislation that would have a profound effect on the American health care system, roughly 1/6 of the United States economy. But it is entirely possible that by week's end, the senators will have passed. Only two Republicans, Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, voted against the procedural motion, though at least several other Republicans had been seen as possible holdouts. No Democrats voted in favor. The Tuesday night vote was on a comprehensive amendment that included disparate proposals calculated to appeal to conservatives and moderates in the. One proposal, offered by Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, would have allowed insurers to sell stripped-down health plans, without maternity care or other benefits required by the Affordable Care Act, if they also sold plans that included such. You shouldn't have to buy what the federal government mandates you must buy, Mr. Cruz said. You should choose what meets the needs for you. The amendment also included money to help pay out-of-pocket medical costs for low-income people, including those who buy private insurance after losing Medicaid coverage as a result of the Senate bill. This proposal was devised by Senator Rob Portman, Republican of Ohio, and other senators from states that have expanded Medicaid under the Affordable. But 9 Republicans, spanning the party's ideological spectrum, voted against the package. The debate to come will have broad implications for health care and households in every state, and in motion. Before senators voted to start the debate in mid-afternoon, protesters in the Senate gallery chanted, "Kill the bill, don't kill us," and "Shame, shame, shame." Despite his vote to move ahead, Mr. McCain offered harsh words for the secretive process by which Senate Republican leaders came up with their bill to repeal and replace the health law, and he delivered a pessimistic take on its chances, asking us to swallow our doubts and force it past a unified opposition. "I don't think that's going to work in the end, and probably shouldn't," Mr. McCain said, adding that it seems likely that the current repeal effort would end in failure. Still, Mr. McCain voted with Republican leaders in favor of the comprehensive replacement plan. Arizona is one of the 31 states that expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, and Mr. McCain's remarks could reflect concerns of other senators from states that expanded Medicaid, including the junior Republican senator from a state, Jeff.
But I stand here today, looking a little worse for wear, I'm sure. I have a refreshed appreciation for the protocols and customs of this body and for the other 99 privileged souls who have been elected to this Senate. I voted for the motion to proceed to allow debate to continue and amendments to be offered. I will not vote for this bill as it is today. I hope we can again rely on humility, on our need to cooperate, on our dependence on each other, to learn how to trust each other again, and by so doing better serve the people who elected us. Stop listening to the bombastic loudmouths on the radio and television and the internet. To hell with them. We've been spinning our wheels on too many important issues because we keep trying to find a way to win without help from across the aisle. That's an approach that's been employed by both sides, mandating legislation from the top down without any support from the other side, with all the parliamentary maneuvers that requires. We're getting nothing done, my friends. We're getting nothing done. And all we've really done this year is confirm Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. I have every intention of returning here and giving many of you cause to regret all the nice things you said about me. And I hope to impress on you again that it is an honor to serve the American people in your company. Thank you, fellow senators. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
We are ground zero for the failure of the exchanges, but we are also an expansion state, Mr. Flake said. I think all of us are concerned that we don't pull the rug out from people. Just before the Senate vote, the Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer of New York, made an impassioned plea to Republicans. We know that ACA is not perfect, Mr. Schumer said. But we also know what you've proposed is much worse. We can work together to improve health care in this country. Turn back now before it's too late, and millions and millions and millions of Americans are hurt so badly in ways from which they will never, ever recover. Given the divisions within their caucus, Senate Republican leaders were considering a new approach to keeping their repeal quest alive. They could try to reach agreement on a slimmed-down bill that would repeal a few major provisions of the Affordable Care Act, like the penalties imposed on people who go without insurance and businesses that do not offer insurance to their Republican leaders would not intend such a bill to become law, but they believed that it could win approval in the Senate. The skinny bill could then be a basis for negotiations with the House. Republican leaders in Congress have struggled all year to fulfill their promise of repealing the by a vote of 217 to 213. The House approved a repeal bill in early May, but only after Republicans overcame their own difficulties in that. Mr. Trump kept up pressure on the Senate on Tuesday with Twitter posts. After the procedural vote, he applauded the Senate, but was cutting toward Ms. Collins and Ms. Murkowski. We had two Republicans that went against us, which is very sad, I think. It's very, very sad. The successful procedural vote was also a moment of redemption, at least temporarily, for Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, the majority leader, who just last week appeared to have failed in his effort to put together a health bill that could squeak through the narrowly divided. That said, it remained far from certain whether Republicans would be able to agree on a bill in the days to come, and what exactly the contents of that bill would be. Mr. McConnell promised an open amendment process in which members of both parties could propose changes. This is just the beginning, Mr. McConnell said. We're not out here to spike the. For weeks, Mr. McConnell has been promoting and revising a comprehensive bill that would repeal the health law while also replacing it, but he has struggled to nail down the support needed to pass that measure. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has yet to assess the most complete version of that legislation, which includes the proposals by Mr. Cruz and Ms. Without that assessment, the measure needed 60 Senate votes, and it failed that test on Tuesday night. The Senate is also expected to vote on a measure that would repeal the health law without putting in place any replacement, but that approach does not appear to have enough support to. That proposal resembles a bill passed by the Senate in 2015 and vetoed by Mr. Obama in early 2016. But it would increase the number of people who are uninsured by 32 million in 2026. Mr. Portman had anguished for weeks over provisions of Mr. McConnell's repeal bill that would make deep cuts in projected Medicaid spending and roll back the expansion of the program under the Affordable. Mr. Portman voted to move ahead with the debate on Tuesday after being assured that the Senate would vote on his plan to provide financial assistance to people moving from an expanded state Medicaid program to private health insurance. States could have used the money, totaling $100 billion, to help low-income people pay deductibles and other out-of-pocket costs when they receive. Mr. Portman worked on the plan with the Trump administration and with several other Republican senators from states that have expanded Medicaid, including Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia and Dean Heller.